Well, good morning. As he said, my name is Jack Morgan, and I work at a company called Duolingo. I'm a designer at Duolingo. If you haven't heard of Duolingo, we're actually the most downloaded education app in the world. We have about 300 million people using Duolingo to learn a language for free. And the mission of the company is to make language education free and accessible to everyone in the world, especially those who can't afford it. So, with that in mind, let me ask you a question. How many of you, with a show of hands, have tried to learn a new language before? Outstanding, that's like 90% of you. How many of you have succeeded? That's often when most of the hands go down, you see. Right? Absolutely. Well, look, whether you've succeeded in learning a new language or you're still trying, you are not alone, because there are approximately 1.2 billion people learning a new language around the world. And the vast majority of them are actually learning one language in particular. The language spoken by everyone in this room, as a matter of fact. About 800 million people are learning English. And many of them are doing it to get out of poverty. The reason for this is quite simple. In most countries, you can earn between 25 and 100% more just by knowing how to speak English. But what about the other 400 million people? Why are they learning a new language? Are they doing it to earn 25% more, or are they doing it to travel, or are they doing it to connect with their families or their partners' families? Well, this is a question that we've been asking ourselves as we've grown and as we think about how we can reach all of those 1.2 billion people learning a new language. We actually have one of, if not the largest data sets of active language learners in existence. And we studied millions of people learning a new language spanning every single country on the planet. And our researchers discovered a lot of interesting things. For example, the best time of day to learn a new language. So it turns out that people who practice learning a new language right before they go to bed remember far more than people who study at other times of day. But we didn't just look at how people were learning a new language, and we also looked at what language they were learning, of course, and where they were in the world. And our researchers created this map. As you can see, it shows us really what we expect. Up in green here, most of the world is learning English. Russia is learning English. South and Central America, of course, are learning English. China is learning English. The Middle East is learning English. Most of the world is learning English. But then we noticed something unexpected, something strange. And if I zoom in here, you might be able to spot it too. The data told us that the most popular language to learn in the country of Sweden, perhaps a few Swedish people here, is Swedish. Sounds like a mistake, doesn't it? Can't be that hard to learn, right? Locals can't be brushing up on Swedish. So why was this? Why was the most popular language to learn in Sweden Swedish? Refugees, yes. So Sweden actually saw more than a 10x increase in the number of refugees seeking asylum in the country between 2015 and 2016. More than 40,000 people applying per month. And as they arrived, they all started looking for a way to learn Swedish for free. And they found us. And we, in turn, found them, it seems. But where did all of these refugees come from? Well, many of them came from Syria. Matter of fact, there are now more registered Syrian refugees on the books than the entire population of the city of Los Angeles. That's right, there are more than 6 million registered Syrian refugees. Now, I don't know about you, but it's quite hard to picture a problem like this. It's quite hard to understand the magnitude of a problem like this. And as you got a sneak glimpse of, I'm pretty sure it is because most of us in this room and outside, people in technology, we are not used to looking at graphs like this, are we? We're used to looking at graphs like this. Same up and to the right trajectory, completely different meaning. In other words, I believe many of us are used to focusing on technology problems instead of people problems. To give an example of that, the UN came out with a study not too long ago that showed that more people have access to cell phones than toilets. Right. I don't know about you, but I'm not sure whether to be impressed or ashamed. But it certainly says something about our priorities, though, doesn't it? More people have access to cell phones than toilets. So that's just it. I believe many of us are focusing on these technology problems, growing users, optimizing for attention, growth at any cost, while not focusing enough on the people at the receiving end of all of this. So, with that in mind, let me ask you another question, and it's a loaded question. How many of you sometimes feel a little disconnected from the people that use your product? From the people you build for, right? Okay, most of you. So, that gets to the heart of it, really. I think that many of us, through no fault of our own, have forgotten that data points are actually people, and that every notch in the line graph is a human being. In other words, as more of us have got connected, we have become more disconnected. And that's why this discovery bothered me so much. You know, I was proud that my work was going to people in need, but all I could see here was what you can see, just one-dimensional. Okay, all this was yet another data point. So we decided to do something about it. Something that I think most of us in this room would be made very uncomfortable by, perhaps. But something that I think, in fact, most tech companies in today's day and age would never even dream of. But we talked to our users. And I don't mean user research. I mean, we actually talked to them like real people, and nothing went wrong. It was brilliant. We did. We just sent them an email, and we said, why are you learning a new language? Bear in mind, there are 300 million people that we can contact, and we emailed them and said, why are you learning a new language? And invited them to write back to us. And what we heard back were stories like this one. I'll read it to you. Learning German was a necessity for me to advance in my career and broaden my options beyond Syria. Well, living in a country torn by hideous war and daily terrible news can be unbearable, but Duolingo always found its ways to lift up my spirit. It's a bit of a fanatical fan there, but he deserves far more credit than we do, of course, for what he's accomplished. Now, we've received many stories like this, especially when we sent that email out. And what they truly proved to us was that really understanding our users cannot come from charts and statistics alone. It cannot come from data alone. It has to come from people. But this still wasn't enough. I mean, first of all, anyone can send an email. And second of all, this was just not the source of the problem that we were looking at. This, while powerful, and the many other stories were just that. They were stories told secondhand. So we decided to go further. Much further, actually. About 6,000 miles further, to be exact. Now, we have a friend. His name is Justin, and he is an award-winning photojournalist, someone who's used to going to difficult, far-flung parts of the world, capturing what is going on there authentically and without a narrative, just capturing what's going on, people's stories, and bringing it back. And we worked with him, and we traveled from the United States, across the Atlantic Ocean to the Middle East, to find and meet the people that were writing back to us. So I'm going to tell you 3 short stories from this journey today. Now, the journey begins here, in a place called Gaziantep, just over the border from Syria in Turkey. Here's what it looks like, part of it anyway. That's one of my favorites. Now, the first person to let us into his home and into his life is a man named Ale. Now, he protested against the Syrian government when the civil war started to break out there. And I don't know what happened, but he was arrested in one of these protests and he was taken off to jail. But he explained to us that this was actually no ordinary jail. He said that he was placed in a room 3 meters wide by 3 meters wide with 50 other men, so small and so crowded that they all had to sit balled up with their knees to their chests, unable to speak and unable to stand up for 1 whole year. Yes, he said he did not see the sun for 1 whole year. When he was released, he left Syria and went to Turkey, where the story takes a bit more of a positive turn, thankfully. He learned to speak Turkish. He taught himself how to speak Turkish, mostly with free resources. He speaks now Turkish, English, and Arabic, and he's become a school teacher at a school in Turkey teaching computer programming and Arabic language lessons. And he's doing much better, as you can see there. He's an incredible man. So next up is a remarkable lady named Noor. Now, she also fled Syria, and she's from Iraq originally, and she left after a car bomb exploded outside her house, shattering the windows of the house and sending bullets flying in all directions. She too traveled to Turkey. She also taught herself how to speak Turkish. She now speaks 5 languages fluently, and she has become a successful software engineer in a part of the world where you don't necessarily find that many female software engineers. She's very remarkable, and her name has a meaning. It actually just means the light, which I think is very appropriate. So I have one more story for you from this journey today. And we were granted, at the final stop of our journey, we were granted last-minute permission to enter this place. Well, this is Azraq Refugee Camp in Amman, Jordan, or outside of Amman, Jordan. It's one of the largest refugee camps on the planet. And most people picture a refugee camp, I think they picture like tents, like camping. I don't think they picture something like this. They don't picture a city. Because Azraq Refugee Camp has a population of 37,000 refugees. And out of 37,000 refugees, 60% of them are children. Now, as you can imagine, this is a very difficult place to get into, security-wise, and you need to get many, many permissions to get into somewhere like this. We actually had to get a document, to tell you the truth, it's written entirely in Arabic, so we don't really know what it says, or you can make out as your own name, but it has these signatures of all different levels of government to get in here. But even once we were inside, they were very hesitant about how much they wanted to show us. And they were a little bit worried about why we were there. They didn't know why we were there. And after a couple of days, we found out why they were so nervous. Well, it turns out the camp actually uses Duolingo to teach the refugees English for free, which is excellent. It's good news, right? So why were they nervous about us being there? Well, it turns out they were worried about us being there because they thought we might have come to sue them. And they thought we came to sue them for copyright infringement because they were putting our logo on the certificates that they give to the students. So they were quite relieved when, in fact, we told them this was not a problem and that they should keep doing it and that we were there to try and help and to try and figure out what's going on. So once they loosened up a little bit and showed us around, they introduced us to this young man. Well, this is Mahmoud, and Mahmoud is 15 years old. He's been at Azraq Refugee Camp since he was a child. Well, his family fled Syria years ago, and they had to move between more than 30 different towns before they arrived at this camp where he is now and where he's been ever since. 30 different towns, hadn't had it easy. Now, we were introduced to Mahmoud because he is just obsessed with learning, completely obsessed with his education. And we, after talking to him for quite a long while, we asked him, captivated by him, and we asked him, what would you say if you could send a message to everyone in the United States? Which is a risky question, to be honest. It's a risky question to ask anybody at this, in this time, especially someone in a difficult situation like this. But he did a great job. He said this: I want them to know about me that I never gave up with the war circumstances that we are in. I love to learn so that life would continue. He puts it very well. That's how they think about education. So we met many countless people on this journey, and as they led us into their homes and their families and their pasts, well, slowly but surely the data points became people, and those charts became faces. But they all seemed to have one thing in common, where they were not learning a new language to earn 25% more, to travel, or to connect with family. Well, they were learning a new language to survive. Because for them, learning a new language was actually a chance at a new life. For them, it was a chance to find home again. So, after learning all of this, we really just had one more question. What do we do with all of this? What do we do about everything we've learned, everything we've gathered? Well, I decided to turn the footage from this journey into a documentary. And the documentary is called Something Like Home, and it was released on World Refugee Day this year. It's since been seen by more than 1 million people, and it actually promotes the United Nations Refugee Council petition. This is not a petition that asks you for donations. This is a petition that asks governments of the world to make sure that all of the refugees in their country get access to free education. So, as we go forward, we are building our product not just for the 300 million people that we're proud to serve, but for all 1.2 billion people learning a new language, and for all of the reasons that they're doing it. Well, whether we're designers, engineers, business people, product people, we consider ourselves responsible for them now. And the same really goes for you. Because in today's highly connected day and age, your work actually has impact far beyond what you could ever imagine. And while you won't often get to decide who gets impacted by your work, you do get to decide how they are impacted by it and what work you choose to do as a result. And for all you know, their very future could be in your hands. Thank you very much.
Thank you.